Special motions, what to use when. Now, from last time, you remember that there are 6 steps for handling a main motion, and that's also true for most of the special motions that we'll be talking about. They also have the 6-step process. So first of all, someone will say, "I move," after they've been recognized by the chair, of course. Then somebody will second the motion, because seconding the motion is the second step in the process. Then the chair repeats the motion and opens the floor for debate. And everyone gets to debate no more than twice. Can also ask questions for clarification. And at this point, the debate time is when you can put in some additional secondary motions or anything else that you want to do. So the special motions that we're talking about today would fit in this time slot. This would occur when another motion is being debated. Would take a vote, might take a majority, most motions do, or it could take 2/3. And as Zach said, we're going to talk about that some more next time. And then the chair is to be reminded to give us the full results of whatever that vote was. So that's the case for main motions and for most of the motions that we're talking about today. So today we're talking about amend, first of all, and amend is probably the most commonly used of all these secondary motions that we're talking about. And it's also the trickiest. So we will spend the most time on that, probably half an hour. So don't get nervous. I will not be forgetting the other motions, but we do need to really dig a bit into amend, because that one is extremely important. And as I said, frequently, it's tricky and not always done correctly. The next one we'll talk about is postpone, or postpone to a certain time. Same thing. Postpone indefinitely, commit or refer, previous questions. And then I heard from Zach, you folks like point of order. So I put that in. And you can't really do point of order without also talking about appealing from the decision of the chair. So this is our plan for today. All right, why does that not go? All right, so first of all will be amend. And if any of you did run out and get a copy of Roberts in Brief, which is what that RIB stands for, this would be chapter 5. So if you're following along, or if you're going to read this at home, that's what you want. Okay, motions that amend we call amendments usually. So let's have a little background. Amendments are secondary motions that attempt to improve a motion by making a change to it. It's a pretty good motion, but it needs a little tweaking. It needs to relate to the motion on the floor, the pending motion, and help us in disposing of them. How are we going to take care of this motion? How are we going to decide what to do about it? Please note, there is no such thing as a, quote, friendly amendment. Just wipe that out of your thought process, please. An amendment is an amendment. If it is something that's very simple, the chair has a way of handling that. That'll be easier to do. And we can talk about that next week as well. If somebody has said that they want to do something on Thursday, October 2nd, and actually the Thursday is October 3rd, that would just be something that you can handle informally. You wouldn't need a big, huge deal about that. But we were not going to call it a friendly amendment, please. Okay. An amendment is made, or proposed anyway, during debate on a motion, and you consider the amendment before deciding the main motion. That is, during debate time, someone says, I move to amend by doing this, that, or the other thing. And then you stop what you're doing with the main motion and just talk about the amendment for a little bit, and then get that settled, voted up or down, and then go back to the main motion, either with or without that amendment. And of course, the chair may request it in writing. Sometimes amendments are a little tricky. well, as I say, most of the time they are. And it's helpful if the chair has them in writing. Now, if it's just a word change, a very simple word change, maybe not. But the chair, as always, may make a request that that motion be in writing. But it requires careful construction to have a good amendment. You want to be sure that your motion to amend says where the change goes and what precise words should be used. Precise words. Okay, so let's see how you handle it. Remember we said that all motions start with I move. Well, if you have a motion to amend, you might want to say I move to amend by, and I like be sure that you think of that amend by, because there are only 3 or 4 possibilities, maybe 4 or 6 possibilities of what to say next, because again, we're being precise. So I move to amend by is the start of most amendments. Now, an amendment needs a second, as you would expect. It may be debated, and you debate only the merits of the amendment. Do we want to make this change or should we not? And it requires a majority vote. An amendment requires a majority vote, even if the motion it is amending takes a 2/3 or something, So, but an amendment itself, majority vote. And this is the case with most of the motions we'll be talking about today. They require a second. They, for the most part, may be debated, and they require a majority vote. There will be exceptions, and we'll talk about those. Then, after repeating the motion to amend, the chair states what the main motion will be like or will become if the amendment is adopted. And that's a new little wrinkle, because we've always said it's you make the motion, you second it, the chair repeats the motion. But during an amendment process, the chair also says what the motion will become if this amendment is adopted. So that's a little new piece for the chair to learn. Lots of stuff for the chair. And then you will take a vote. The first vote will determine the fate of the amendment only. That is, will this main motion be changed as proposed here? It's just the amendment that you're voting on first. Adopting the amendment does not adopt the main motion. And this is where some of the confusion comes. Adopting the amendment is fine, but it does not adopt the main motion. You have to go through that process again. And if you think of it this way, you have 2 motions. You have the main motion on the floor, and then you have this amendment. So if you have 2 motions, then you have to have 2 votes. And that might help. Okay, after the amendment is decided, the chair states that the main motion, with or without that change, whichever the vote came out to be, that motion is pending now, and it's ready for further debate, amendment, and vote. So you take care of the amendment, and then you state what the motion is now, and then you can kind of start the process from there. More debate, more amendment if somebody wants to, and then you go into the vote on the main motion as amended or not. Now, the motion in its final form is what is recorded in the minutes. You don't have to put in the whole amending process. I remember when I was a secretary, I was so relieved to find that out, because, I was thinking, okay, I have to put the amendment or the motion down as originally, and then somebody moved to amend it, and the amendment passed, and another amendment failed, back and forth. But all you have to do, and this is according to Roberts, is put that motion in its final form. So you would say something like, after amendment, the motion made by so-and-so to do this and that was adopted, or not. Excuse me. I have still not gotten rid of that cough that I had 6 weeks ago. There we go. Okay, so how do we do amending? Well, there are 3 forms if we're just talking about a word or 2, and we call those simple word changes. One way to do it is to insert or add words. So here we would start the motion with, I move to amend by, Remember that I move to amend by inserting the words such and such. You're going to stick some words in there. But you have to tell in the motion where the words are supposed to go. Where are you going to insert them? Between this word and that word? In the middle? Where? So that has to be part of your motion. Or if you're going to put words at the end, then you can use the word add, A-D-D. I move to amend by adding the words whatever, and then you don't have to tell where those words go because you've used add, and that means automatically they go at the end. So insert for someplace in the middle and add at someplace at the end. But they're basically the same thing. You're sticking in some new words into the motion. At least that's your proposal. So added words automatically go at the end. Another thing you can do with amending is to strike out words. I move to amend by striking out the word or words such and such. And that's all you're doing is just taking out that word. You think it's superfluous, it gives too much information that you don't need, whatever. So you move to strike out a word or words out of the pending motion. Again, that takes a second. You can be debated, majority vote on whether or not to make the amendment. The third way is to strike out words and insert words in the same place, or strike out the same words and put them into a different place. That's confusing. More likely, it'll be the first, to strike out words and insert new words in the same place. So strike and insert all in one motion, rather than separate it out like the other two were. Are you with me? Okay. All right. So there you'd say, I move to amend by striking out the words such and such and inserting the words so and so. And since it's in the same place, you don't have to indicate or say where they go at this point. All right. So those were for words, like a word or two or three or four, just a couple words. But let's talk about amending paragraphs. Now, sometimes a paragraph is just a long sentence, and that's okay. So there are three forms for paragraphs, and there's no surprise here. The first two are insert or add a paragraph, just like you did with words, or strike out a paragraph, also what you did with words. And you'll be most likely dealing with paragraphs if you are amending the bylaws, for instance, where you have a lot of words to deal with, or if you are taking out kind of an entire motion and substituting another. And substituting is the next one, and that's very much like a strikeout and insert, because you are striking out a paragraph and substituting or putting in a different one. At least that is your proposal. And if you happen to have the Robertson brief, I have quoted page 49 here. So this is 1 and 2 are not really different, but 3 is going to sound different. It's not totally different, but it's going to sound different. Okay, from RIB page 49. The chair puts the question to a vote in this way. Everything else has happened the way you expected. Motions made, seconded, repeated, da-da-da-da. But when it's time to vote, the chair will say, the pending motion is that the tennis league establish a league for high school students. If you get Robertson brief, you will see that this is their motion that they take throughout that throughout that chapter, talking about a tennis league, an adult tennis league, and this, somebody has made the motion that the tennis league adults establish something for high school students. Okay, so that's what's on the floor. That's the pending motion. But there is a motion proposed as a substitute that says that high school students be encouraged to form their own league. In other words, instead of having the adults do it, have the kids do it themselves. Okay. So the question is, and this was the first question that you'll have, the first vote, shall the motion last read be substituted for the pending motion. Now that's what's different. Shall the motion last read, that is, the high school kids form their own, be substituted for the pending motion? And the pending motion is that the adults will do it. So then you would take the vote, yes or no, in effect. Shall that new motion be substituted? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no, and then you know. Now, if you adopt the substitution, no. If you adopt the motion to substitute and then take out that the tennis league establish a league for high school students, you are left with that the high school students be encouraged to form their own league. And that's what the chair will state. The question now is on the main motion as amended, that high school students be encouraged to form their own league. So for paragraphs, if you want to strike out and insert a new one, you need to really use this language of substitution. Now, this is, to me, this is the really hard thing. It makes sense if you can, ponder it a while, but it doesn't, it's difficult for people when you're explaining it to a group as to what they're going to do. So I try to avoid it, tell you the truth, but sometimes you need to use it, and it's a good thing to do. All right, how are we doing? Oops, keep hitting the wrong thing. Okay, additional rules for amendments now. Amendments may be themselves amended, and it's called a secondary amendment. But you don't have amendments to the amendment to the amendment. They draw the line at 2 amendments. You may have a main motion, an amendment, and a secondary amendment, but that's as far as we go. And that's good news, because that would just be a mess. In that case, amendments to the amendment, you would have 3 motions. The main motion, the first amendment, we call it the primary amendment, plus the secondary amendment. 3 motions, 3 votes. Going backwards, you'd go with the secondary amendment, and then you'd process the amendment, and then you process the main motion. See why we want to take some time on this? It is complicated. And in Robertson brief, the authors suggest that you do something else besides the secondary amendment thing. The main motion and the amendment, fine. But if somebody makes a secondary, or instead of making a secondary amendment, you would say, if you are against the motion or the amendment that's up, if you will vote down this amendment that's on the floor right now, this primary amendment, I will offer an amendment that will be something else. And then you can encourage, you're speaking against the motion in effect. And if people will vote that down, then you will come up with a new primary amendment. And then that makes it an easier process for everybody to understand. Now, another rule, amendments must be germane, which means related to the pending motion. If your motion is to buy a desk for the office, you can't amend by inserting, or I guess adding would be this one, and send the president to a meeting in San Francisco. That is, that's 2 different things entirely, and that should be a separate motion, and you can't sneak that in. This is not Congress. I guess in Congress they can do something like that, but in Roberts you cannot. Congress does not use Roberts. Does everybody know that? They use Masons, I think. Okay, so amendments must be germane or related to the pending motion. And then another rule, once the group has voted, that is, has decided on something, the matter is settled for this meeting. So you can't fix it at this meeting without doing all sorts of strange things. So you need to fix it. If it needs fixing, you need to fix it while it's pending. And our example will help with that. Okay, Zach, do we have any questions at this point? Everybody scratching their heads, or are they all with me?
Sorry, trying to get my camera back on. There are no questions from our attendees, but I have a question.
All right.
Um, since we want all of our words and our amendments to be precise, um, it seems like there could be situations where a motion is made and the attendees need some time to process it in order to know whether they want to amend it, and if so, how, with which precise words. Is there any standard way of sort of accommodating the time that people need to think about this kind of stuff? I could imagine thinking, "Ooh, I need to amend this in such a way," but things start moving along and I miss my opportunity.
Mhm. Well, I think some of the motions that we'll be talking about next will help a little bit with that. If it is something really heady, something you really have to think about, then it would be wise to refer it to a committee or postpone it or something like that. And those are motions that we'll be talking about now. Most of these motions are little ones. Things that are the most serious, I guess, are amendments to the bylaws, I think. And that's a slightly different, well, that's a largely different process. Um, most of the time you have to give notice in your call to a meeting that you want to amend the bylaws. It'll, that would be an opportunity for people to think about it before they get to the meeting and do their processing of their words. But yeah, we should have some way uh, to stop stop everything so we can think about it. And you can also take, offer to take a recess or make a motion to take a recess so you can think about it. And I did not deal with recess today. But yes, and I appreciate that because sometimes we get into, oh, look at the time. I want to, let's just get out of here. We'll just vote everything in, and then it'll be fine. So you don't want to fall into that trap. So give yourself whatever you need to think about it some more. So yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Just a reminder to everybody, if you do have a question, feel free to pop it into the chat and then I can ask Pat when there's an opportunity to do so. Don't hold back.
That's right. Okay. So we're going to do a little exercise here. My favorite motion to play with when we're doing amending is this one here, to purchase an Oriental rug for the office. So this motion has been made and seconded and repeated by the chair. The chair is asked, is there any debate? And people look at that and think, we can improve this motion. So let's, as a group, kind of be thinking about it. We don't have a lot of opportunity to go back and forth, so I will have to assume some of your comments, and I'll do it. But if you've got a question, please raise it in the chat. So, purchase an Oriental rug for the office. Okay, we are not General Mills. We are not furnishing the office of the CEO. So, to my mind, Oriental has got to go. Do you agree? I mean, I love Oriental rugs, but ka-ching, they cost. Okay, so the first thing I would do is, okay, you're going to see these both come up at the same time. Sorry about that. First thing I would do is I would offer a motion like this. I'd say, I move to amend by striking out Oriental. And that's all I say. I don't say anything else. And that's the part of the reason why people get mixed up with amendments is that the person goes to the microphone or raises their hand or whatever, and they're recognized and they start talking and they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk. With amendments, less is more. I move to amend by striking out Oriental. And you stop. Then your friend seconds it. And the chair repeats it. It is moved to amend this motion by striking out Oriental. If the amendment is adopted, the motion will read that we purchase a rug for the office. Is there any debate? Are you ready for the question? And then we vote after anybody has debated who wishes to. And then it takes a majority vote, and we'll say that that passes. So now the motion is, I'm still on line 1, purchase a rug for the office. So that's our pending motion, because we have taken out Oriental. Okay, then we'll go to line 2. Somebody has just remembered that we recently painted the office this lovely shade of gray, and wouldn't a blue rug look really nice? So that person is recognized by the chair, and he or she says, I move to amend the motion by inserting blue before rug. And the motion is seconded. The chair repeats it, and then the chair says, if this amendment is adopted, the motion would be to purchase a blue rug for the office. See how this is going? Oh, before I leave this, I wanted to note that in number 1, purchase a rug, purchase an Oriental rug. We don't worry about changing the article. It's okay to go from an to a without doing anything. You don't have to amend that. You can just make that editorial adjustment between the an and the a. Okay, wanted to say that. Okay, so we've done 2 things now. We've made 2 amendments. We struck out Oriental. We've inserted blue. So our motion is to purchase a blue rug for the office. Then somebody who realizes that we're buying something, and it's always a good idea when you are going to buy something to put an upper limit on the spending, the amount to be spent. So someone is going to say, I move to amend by adding at a cost not to exceed $2,000. You think, well, that's great to have a motion like that, but $2,000 is kind of rich. I think we could get by with a whole lot less. Probably was the same person who wanted an Oriental rug, but we'll see. So you say, I better do something before the cost, that $2,000, is settled. So this motion, cost not to exceed 2,000, is still pending. That is, we have not voted on it yet. So before it is voted on, and you don't, if you don't like that 2,000, you better act now. Otherwise, it is settled, and 2,000 will be it. Okay, so you have a couple options. One, you can do that secondary amendment thing that we said that can be tricky, but this would be pretty simple. And you can say, I move to amend by striking out 2,000 and inserting 600. And if that passes, then the amendment would become at a cost not to exceed 600. So that would be a possibility. Or you can talk to people and debate and persuade them to defeat this amendment. And then if they do, then you will offer a new amendment at a cost not to exceed $600. Either way, you end up in the same place. It just depends on which way you'd like to do it. Okay, we'll say that passes one way or the other. The amendment passes. The amendment to the amendment, or the new amendment, whichever way you decide to do it. And so people have stopped debating after this, or not, well, yeah, probably stopped debating, stopped amending at any rate. And so the final motion, as it is going to be stated before you vote, is that you purchase a blue rug for the office at a cost not to exceed $600. And then you vote that up or down. Okay. Clear? Clear. Right. Okay, then we're going to move to the next one. That was amend. And I hope you were able to absorb all of that, because I know it's a lot of information. Okay, postpone to a certain time. delays consideration of the motion. You want more time to think about it. You either need more information or you just want to sit with it for a while, so you can delay it till later in the meeting. You can say, I move to postpone until 2 o'clock this afternoon, or you can move to postpone it to the next meeting. I move to postpone this motion to the next meeting. It requires a second. The chair would repeat it. Open the floor for debate, and you would talk about the merits of postponing. Is it a good idea to postpone it, or is it not? You're not going to talk about the motion itself. You're just going to talk about the matter of postponing. Should we postpone, or will it be too late next time to decide? And it will probably pass. Takes just a majority vote. And then at that point, it will appear on the agenda automatically, either at the specified time, whatever we said, 2 o'clock this afternoon, or on the next meeting agenda before new business. It has priority above whatever the new business is that will come up next time. It'll have priority because it was postponed. Now, when you heard me talk about this, did another word come to your mind? Instead of postpone, did you think of the T word? Please do not use the T word for this. And of course, that's table. There is a motion to lay something on the table in Roberts, but it is not what you think it is. So let's not get involved with that. Table is not what you want. Table is what you hear, but table is not the correct form or the correct motion for this. And I've been a parliamentarian for over 20 years. I've been to a lot of meetings, and I've heard people use that term, but they have never, ever used it correctly. They always mean to say either postpone to a certain time, or the next one we'll talk about in a minute, postpone indefinitely. They never mean lay it on the table because there's an urgent matter coming before we have to do before, and then we'll have to take it from the table. Anyway, they don't mean the T word. So please, that's another word to get rid of. Get rid of friendly amendment and get rid of table a motion, because that's not what you mean. You mean you want to postpone it to another time. Now, and as chair, if someone says, I want to table this until next meeting, you would say, I believe you mean postpone. So I will, so you repeat the motion as it is moved to postpone this motion to the next time. So you make that correction. You gently use it, use it as a teaching moment if you want to, but gently make that correction, change it from table to postpone. And as chair, you can do that because that's what they mean. So getting rid of the T word. Okay, here's the other form of postpone indefinitely. Now this one kills the motion without taking a direct vote on it. And that's sometimes what people mean when they say they want to table it. They want to kill it. And postpone indefinitely is the motion that'll do that for them. And there are times when it's a really good idea. So let's see. Don't use the T word here either. And if postpone indefinitely is adopted, the main motion will be gone. It doesn't come back at another time like it did with postpone. Postpone, the motion comes back. But in postpone indefinitely, it doesn't. It's gone for the day. It gets rid of an embarrassing or inappropriate motion, or one that's just going to cause a problem. Okay, let me give you an example. Election season. Okay, somebody has heard that one of your members is running for office, and so they think it'd be really nice to endorse them. So they make a motion. I move that we endorse Zach Miller for animal control officer in his community. Somebody seconds it, the chair repeats it, and then you think, huh? I mean, Zach's a good guy, but this is not something that we do. It's not the purpose of our organization to get into that kind of thing. I'm gonna take a drink of water, excuse me. If we vote in favor of this motion, it'll set a precedent. We might be asked to endorse other folks for things, and that's not what we do. And if we vote against it, against the motion, it'll sound like we're saying that Zach is not a good person and he would be a terrible animal control officer. And we don't want to do that because that would not be the case. So this is the time where someone said, I move to postpone this motion indefinitely. And that's needs a second. It is debatable. You can even talk about the merits of the motion itself with postpone indefinitely. You can't with postpone, but you can with postpone indefinitely. And then you take a vote, and it takes a majority vote. And if the majority says aye, then the original motion goes away, and you don't have to vote on whether you want to endorse Zach or not. And that's a good way to handle something like that. And in election season, you might have something like that. But to kill the motion, you use postpone indefinitely. Okay, another good one to use is refer to committee. This sends a motion or a matter, it doesn't have to be a full-blown motion yet, just an idea, to a small group to study and make recommendations to the large group. And then the large group will eventually vote on those recommendations. But the committee is going to do the work and do the research and really figure out what they think would be the best way to handle that particular idea. It could be sent to the standing committee. You have standing committees probably listed in your bylaws, and if you do, a lot of groups have something like called a finance committee. So if it's a financial matter, then it would need to be sent to the finance committee, and they would be, the one to take care of it. But if you don't have a committee that's already formed that would naturally take care of this, whatever it is, then a special committee can be formed that would be in existence only until they make their final report. One of the things that a committee might do is just redraft a poorly worded motion that somebody came up with. It was a good idea, but the group did not want to spend a lot of time figuring out how that motion really should read. So they can send that to a committee and have them look at that. At the end of the report that the committee makes at the next meeting or whenever they are instructed to report, they will present their recommendations as motions. And then those motions are processed. Those motions would not require a second because the committee has endorsed them or has presented them, so that that more than one person agrees with the idea of talking about that. And this referring things to committee saves a group a lot of time when there are lots of details and research involved. And sometimes you get into really picky matters. You're going to have a reception for someone for an occasion, what color should the napkins be? A committee can determine that. You don't want to spend time in your large group figuring out that kind of stuff, because that makes members want to leave. Okay. Now, another favorite is previous question. Yes, Zach, there you are. What?
Regarding the committee, if it's not a standing committee, what process do you have to follow to choose the members and make it official?
Very good. Good question. There are several ways to do it. It would be part of your motion to refer to committee. You can say something like, I move to refer this matter to a committee of 3 members appointed by the chair. Or you could say, I move to refer this to a committee of consisting of Ann, Barbara, and Charlie. And so that would be part of the motion. Now, if you forget to do that, or if that doesn't happen, then you could go ahead and have another motion to determine who is going to be on the committee. Now, again, that's a place too, you can check your bylaws, because sometimes the bylaws will say something like the chair can appoint all committees that are formed by the body, something like that. So you see what it says in your bylaws, and if it doesn't say anything, then it would be done by motion. And the first person named is the chairman, ordinarily. So, good.
Okay, thank you, Pat.
You're welcome. Good questions. You guys have such good questions. I really do appreciate that. Okay, previous question. That's a strange title for what this is. The previous question is a motion to stop debate. Now, I think we've all been in a meeting where there's somebody in the back of the room yells, question, and the chair says, oh, we're going to stop debate now. The question has been called. We're going to go right to the vote. Well, that's not the way it's done. I mean, that's the way it is done, but it's not supposed to be done. Excuse me. In order to make the motion to stop debate, I move the previous question as a wording. The maker must have been recognized by the chair. So you can't just yell it out. You have to have recognition, just as you would for any other motion that you're going to make. It requires a second, which is a surprise to a lot of people, but why not? It requires a second, and it requires a 2/3 vote. A majority is not enough, and I'll tell you why. As a member, you have certain rights. Among them are attending meetings, making motions, debating, and voting. And somebody is suggesting that you give up your right to debate at this point. And I mean, it might not be a bad idea if the motion or if the debate has been going on, you might be really ready to give up your right to debate. But one person acting alone does not have the authority to take that away from you as a member. So in order for the group to give up a right like that, it requires a 2/3 vote, just because we hold these rights to be sacred. Okay. And of course, you don't amend it, you don't debate the motion to stop debate. And if it passes, the chair would then take the vote immediately on the pending question. And that's what previous question means, that you're going to stop debate right now. And the group agrees to it by a 2/3 vote. So the chair goes straight to the vote on whatever matter is pending. And it's interesting, this motion and any motion to limit debate may not be used in committees. The role of a committee is to dig deep and just keep going until they get all the information, all the opinions, all of everything out there. So you cannot move the previous question. You cannot move to limit debate in a committee. Just a fun fact. Okay, now here we get to your point of order. All right, now I have been telling you that you always make a motion by saying, I move, and then it always requires a second, and the chair always repeats it, and all that always stuff. Well, this is the exception. Point of order is totally different. Point of order calls the chair's attention to a violation of a rule or a significant mistake made by the chair. Now, don't go nitpicking on the chair. You know, if they don't say something quite right, or if they don't do it quite right, it doesn't matter as long as someone's rights are not violated. If they're violating a right, then you jump in. But if there's some rule that's being violated and the chair is not aware of it, or the chair is not doing anything about it, then you can say point of order. It must be made at the time of the infraction. You can't wait till, another motion's been made and passed and all that other stuff before you call the chair's attention. It's got to be made in a timely manner. And no recognition is needed from the chair, which means you may interrupt. You may interrupt a speaker by calling out point of order. So in that case, a member just says point of order. You don't have to say, I move something. You just say point of order. And the chair says, please state your point. Please tell us what the problem is. And then the chair makes a ruling. There's no voting on it. The chair makes a ruling and takes corrective action if it's needed. Now, the way the chair would rule would say something like, your point is well taken, which means the chair agrees with what you said and will fix it. Or your point is not well taken, and the chair is just going to continue as is. So you don't have to say, I move. It does not require a second. And at this point, there is no vote. The chair, you're just asking the chair to make a ruling to fix something that has gone wrong in your opinion. And if the chair is unsure, they may put to a vote of the assembly for the judgment after you've had some debate. Now, the chair doesn't usually do this for point of order, but it can happen and it's okay. All right. Now I do this one, appeal from the decision of the chair. And it's appeal from, it sounds like the wrong preposition, but that's what it says. Appeal from the decision of the chair. This is in case there's a ruling by the chair, usually from a point of order, that you don't agree with. Now, you don't agree with because you know the rule. It's not you don't agree with because he just shut down your friend and you want your friend to be able to speak, even though the friend was in violation. It's not a disagreement in that sense. It's a disagreement in the sense that you know what the rule is and the chair is still violating it and you want it fixed. I mean, you have to have something behind this. This is just not your personal feeling on something. This has to be based on fact. So you can appeal from the ruling of the chair. Again, you may interrupt. The chair does not need to recognize you. And the member says, I appeal from the decision of the chair. Again, you don't say, I move. It's just, I appeal. But you have to have a second on this. So if you're going to do this, be sure you get the person sitting next to you or somebody to yell out second, because it is required in an appeal. You didn't need it in point of order, but you do need it in appeal to make sure that there is somebody else in the room who would kind of agree with you and that this needs to be fixed, talked about, voted on. Now, when an appeal is made like this and seconded, the chair must submit the ruling to the assembly for a vote. The chair can't just blow you off. And this is why appeal is in there, to make sure you don't get abused by a tyrannical chair. Hopefully you never have to use it, but I've seen it done in, friendly situations where there's been disagreement on something and it's been appropriate and it's been handled well. But you want to make sure there are checks and balances anytime. In democracy, we try to do this, checks and balances. So one side doesn't have too much power over the other. So this is trying to make sure that everybody gets heard. Heard, that was heard with a D, not hurt with a T. Okay, so the chair must submit the ruling to the assembly. Now, this is a new thing in here, or not new, but this is a different thing. You've probably heard me say that the chair needs to be neutral. The chair does not express an opinion and still be in the chair. But this is a case where the chair gets to debate. Chair doesn't get to debate anything else at any other time, while still being in the chair. He can vacate the chair temporarily, and if the chair wants to speak on something, debate on something. But to still stay in the chair, this is the only time he or she can debate. So the chair gets to debate first and then last. Everybody else may debate in between, but only once. Remember, we said that it's typical that you may speak only twice on a motion on the same day. In this case, you may speak only once on this particular motion. So appeal is very different. Okay, so the chairs, at the first part, the chair will say why he or she ruled a certain way, and then other people can speak, and then the chair can wrap it up. And when everybody else is done, then the chair can rebut anything else that was said or repeat important points from the first time. Then when the chair puts the question to a vote, notice that has to be stated in such a way that if you're voting in favor of the motion, you are voting to uphold the decision of the chair. We don't want to get into the double negative thing where you're voting against it by voting in favor, nothing like that. So the chair puts the question to a vote, usually like this: shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? Okay, I'm just about done with this slide. Okay. Now, it takes a majority in the negative to overturn the chair's decision. In other words, if there's a majority in favor, okay, that's easy. The chair wins. The ruling of the chair is upheld. But if there is a tie vote, the chair's ruling is sustained. And that's different because in other motions, if there's a tie vote, the motion is lost. But in appeal, a tie vote sustains the decision of the chair. But if there has to be a majority in the negative in order to overturn the chair's decision. Okay, Zach, what would you like to ask me?
Actually, my Zoom froze and restarted, and so my camera just appeared there. There are actually no questions at the moment.
Oh, I'm disappointed. Oh, come on, let's have some questions.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right. All right, what do we have next? Oh, we have this any questions slide. No. Okay, we only have 5 minutes. Okay, I've got a, does that mean you have a question?
I was just preparing to address the group if there are questions, but go ahead with your slide.
Okay, all right, this is kind of my summary here. What motion do you use when you need more information to decide how to vote? If you want to unmute yourself and yell out something, I'd be happy to hear it. If you need more information to decide how to vote, what should you do? Okay, I'll jump in then. Refer the matter to a committee. Refer it to a committee, let them get more information, dig and get more information and prepare a report and let you know what their recommendation is and what their facts are, kind of a fact-finding deal. Okay. All right, if you feel that motion that's pending will embarrass the group, what do you do? What motion do you use?
Postpone indefinitely.
Yes, postpone indefinitely. Thank you very much. Yeah, okay. Animal control officer, huh? Okay, if you think debate has gone on long enough, what do you say?
Previous question.
Yes, you move the previous question. It would be better to consider this motion at the next meeting rather than now. We're kind of crunched for time. What do you want to do?
Postpone.
You want to postpone. Postpone it to a certain time or just say postpone, that's fine. So postpone. Your next meeting, by the way, has to be within a quarterly time interval. That is, within 3 or 4 months. It can't be, you can't postpone something to like a year from now, your next convention or something. You have to send it to committee in order to keep it alive, if you want to do it that way. Okay, members are speaking without recognition from the chair. That's a
Feel free to
violation.
unmute, folks.
Yeah.
Point
Members,
of order. Yes.
point of order is correct. Yes, that's a violation of the rule. The rule is that you have to be recognized by the chair. It keeps things orderly. It makes, people speak in turn, all that good stuff. Point of order if that rule is not being followed. All right, this motion needs to be tweaked in order to be acceptable. Close but no cigar. What would you like? What would we do? Need to make a few changes.
I think we would want to amend.
We would, indeed. We'd make a motion to amend. Okay, that ruling by the chair doesn't make any sense to me. The chair's made a ruling that doesn't make sense. What do we do?
How about an appeal to the ruling?
Appeal from the decision of the chair would do it. Okay. I have 11:29. Well, my last slide is happy Thanksgiving. See you on December 6th.